Hi, my name is Chelsea, and I am going to talk you through some of the lifestyle changes that are recommended to start working on before your surgery. So oftentimes what we want to focus on before surgery, rather than putting you on a specific diet or losing a certain amount of weight, we oftentimes want to focus on just creating these lifestyle changes, new rhythms in life, new habits, all of those things that will kind of carry you through this new lifestyle that you're going to be living after surgery. So my recommendation to you as we go through these changes that are recommended is to go ahead and pick one or two to focus on for now. Once you've kind of got one or two of those down pretty good, then you can move on to another one, and eventually you'll be incorporating all of these things into your daily rhythms. So let's get started. Habit number one is starting to log your food. So we use an app called Berrytastic, but you're also welcome to use any other app that can log your food. And we want you to go ahead and get familiar with the apps, start logging everything that you're eating and drinking, mostly just for you to familiarize yourself with exactly what's going into your body. How many grams of protein are you getting per day? What about carbohydrates, sugar, fiber, things like that? So if you can go ahead and get started on that now, that will kind of decrease that learning curve a little bit, because as you'll notice when you start tracking, what you'll have to know is how much of every food that you're eating, because it'll ask you to log that. And so if you don't know the difference between a half a cup or a cup or 3 ounces versus 8 ounces, you're going to want to go ahead and maybe get some tools to help you measure those things. That way you can log your foods accurately. Another benefit of logging your foods is that it actually provides accountability to you. Oftentimes whenever you have to actually write something down that you eat or drink, you kind of think twice about it. So if you're reaching for that soda, you're like, ooh, I'm gonna have to log that. Do I really want to add that into my diet, or maybe should I move to something different? So it does provide a lot of accountability, and then again, just insight into exactly what's going into your body on a daily and weekly basis. So the Berrytastic app that we use, if you would like to put in our program code, that is 77952, and that will connect you to our office, and it'll allow you to see all of our different educational materials that we've put in there. And we can also look at your food logs, that way in case you ever need help or tips or anything like that, we're free to provide those for you. Habit number two is to start eating out less. So we live in a very fast-paced culture. Everybody is kind of on the go. I understand a lot of people have kiddos that are in sports, and so you're grabbing something to eat between a ball game or between a practice. But what we want to practice is eating at home most often, primarily so that you can choose the ingredients that are coming into your foods. As well, you can better choose your portion sizes. So start practicing that. One thing you can also use as just kind of a guide for cooking more at home, there are a lot of bariatric cookbooks out there. We also have the Primal Kitchen cookbooks. And then just in general, if you follow our food list that we put in your packet, that food list is going to be a general idea of what we want you to eat 80 to 90% of the time. And so if you want to use that for your grocery shopping or meal planning, that's a great starting point. Okay, habit number three is to start following a more structured eating pattern. So something that we see a lot is that people are skipping breakfast, skipping dinner, and they're only eating 1 meal a day, or they're snacking all day long and they never stop eating. So after surgery, we kind of want to meet in the middle somewhere. So snacking all day long basically is going to go around your tool. So you're going to be constantly able to eat because you're never actually feeling full. And so usually people are able to eat more, and you also tend to not eat as healthful items. And so try, if you are one of those people who grazes throughout the day, set yourself a schedule. Set a time for breakfast, a time for lunch, a time for dinner. If you are hungry in between, set a time to have something to eat, but don't make it a snack food. Make it something that you can put on a plate. That way you're not digging into the entire bag of chips, and you're making better choices that way. And then another thing too, if you're one of those people who's just often skipping meals, after surgery, right after surgery, for the first few weeks or so, you're just not going to be able to get in all of your nutrition if you're only eating 1 time a day. So what we want you to start practicing is at least meeting your bare minimum protein goals for the day. If that requires 2 meals, great. If it requires 3, 4, however many, start practicing that so that we can get in the habit of that before the surgery comes around. Okay, habit number 4 is to include protein with every meal. Protein foods are things like beef, chicken, fish, turkey, eggs, pork, cheese, or any other similar items. So what this does by including protein with your meal, it helps decrease the response of your blood sugar to food, and it also helps to keep you fuller for longer. So we do prefer that if you are including protein with your meals, that it is from food sources rather than supplements. For example, we'd rather you have a piece of fish instead of a protein shake or a protein bar. So keep that in mind. Habit number 5. This is going to be our beverages and everything related to beverages. So we want you to primarily choose from water, unsweetened tea, and black coffee. So if you have anything else that's in your typical regimen of things that you drink, start working on decreasing that, because that might be one of the more difficult things for you, especially if you're used to drinking a lot of carbonated drinks or sugary drinks or things with caffeine in them. You're going to want to start weaning yourself down on those. So our goal for you with water every day is 64 ounces. That's about 4 bottles. If you've got the Yetis, it's about 2 of the big ones. Okay, so what water does is it actually helps to digest the extra protein that you're going to be requiring with this surgery. And then, of course, just lots of other benefits for your body. And so make sure that you're staying hydrated, getting in that 64 ounces of water every day. It's a good thing to practice now. Another thing is cutting out all sugary beverages. So for example, if you are doing sweet tea, juice, lemonade, Kool-Aid, sodas, anything like that that's got the sugar in them. Also, creamer in your coffee, that's another one. So if you're doing anything like that, we want you to slowly work your way off of those. The sugar ultimately is just not going to help you with the weight loss and is not one of the things that's improving your metabolism. So we want to get off of the sugary drinks especially. And so a lot of times people will ask, okay, well, can I go to a diet soda, or can I use Sweet and Low in my tea or something like that? So the short answer is yes, you can do that, but I always recommend using those like sugar alcohols or the sugar substitutes of any kind, those artificial sweeteners. I always recommend using those as a bridge to get off of sugar. So some people's bridge may only be a couple of weeks long, other people's it might take a few months, but ultimately when we're using those artificial sweeteners, they can they can actually cause some difficulties with your GI system, and then they can also increase your cravings for sweet foods. So ultimately our long-term goal for you is to get you off of those artificial sweeteners. So as much as you can, work your way towards that. Okay, and another thing with beverages, we want to eliminate anything that has carbonation. Most often this is soda, but it can also be in things like beer or champagne, energy drinks, anything similar. So anything that has those bubbles in it. After surgery, what happens with the smaller size stomach, with those bubbles in there, it can often cause pain or even acid reflux. So as much as you're able to start working your way off of the carbonated drinks, it's not to say that you'll never be able to have one ever again, but it is something that's not recommended, especially in the beginning. And then I would also caution you, if you are a soda drinker, going back to carbonation after surgery can be a pretty slippery slope, so make sure you're keeping an eye on that. Another recommendation with beverages is to avoid caffeine for 30 days after surgery, or until you're able to get 64 ounces of water a day. So one of the most common things that people struggle with after surgery is dehydration, and caffeine can dehydrate you. So if you're drinking a bunch of coffee or a bunch of things that have caffeine, like energy drinks, what's going to happen is you're just working against yourself on that hydration, and you're more likely to get to the point of dehydration. So for 30 days or until you're able to get the 64 ounces, cut out the caffeine. Another recommendation is to sip your liquids, not gulp. So you got to remember, after surgery, you've got that smaller stomach. If you're gulping things down and they're going in very quickly, you're more than likely going to experience some pain, some burping, or even possibly puking. So we want to avoid that if at all possible. So if you are one of those people who can down a bottle of water in just a few gulps, start practicing slowing that down right now. And then alcohol is recommended to stay off of for a minimum of 3 months after surgery while your stomach is healing. My personal recommendation would be for you to wait at least a year, just because alcohol is one of those things that's going to add unnecessary calories. It doesn't help your metabolism to burn fat. And so if that's your ultimate goal, stay off of it for a year, and that'll give you plenty of space, plenty of time to reach your goals, and just go really hard at that. So 1 year, no alcohol. Okay, habit number 6 is to practice mindful eating. So essentially what this means is just getting back in tune with what your body is telling you. So you have to remember after surgery, you're gonna have a brand new sized stomach. You're not gonna be familiar with how big or how small it is. And honestly, that's gonna change over time. And so the best thing that you can do is get in tune with your body signals. But what that requires from you as far as eating is actually slowing down. So there's a bit of a delay between the signaling in the stomach and the brain. So if you eat a meal in about 5 minutes, you're actually not even going to recognize that you're full, and you're more likely to overeat, and that's something we want to avoid long term. So what you want to do, practice taking 20 to 30 minutes per meal. You may have to put your fork down between bites, make sure you're cutting everything in small pieces, chewing everything. Maybe each bite you take 20 or 30 chews on that. I know it's basically going to be mush before you swallow it, but that's going to be your best bet for slowing down if you're not used to that. And then also try not to eat in front of any type of a screen. So if you're used to eating in front of the TV or your work computer or your phone, work your way off of that because those are things that are just distracting. Another thing is to not eat and drink at the same time. So what that's going to do with this smaller stomach that you'll have after surgery, fills you up very quickly, but it can also kind of wash the food through, and then your stomach is empty and you can eat again, and that can lead to overeating. So what we want to do is have your meal first. Try not to drink very much, but if you do need a sip or two, that's okay. Wait about 30 minutes and then you can start having your drink again. And lastly, with mindful eating, we want you to start developing healthier coping mechanisms for things like stress, boredom, happiness, sadness. A lot of people in those moments turn to food for comfort. And that is one of the things after surgery that's gonna kind of stick with you if you're in that habit. So one of the things I would recommend is just kind of writing down some of the different maybe hobbies that you have or things that you can do that do not involve food whenever you are stressed or bored or happy or sad. So read a book, take a bath, call a friend, go on a walk, things like that. And then once you've got those things identified that you can do instead of turning to food for comfort, the hard part is actually implementing it. So feel free, if you feel like you are more of an emotional eater or you really struggle with that or food addiction or anything similar, work with a therapist on that. Our office has references for you there as far as people that you can contact for some help that way. So just let us know if you need that support. Habit number 7 is going to be exercise. So our long-term goal for you with exercise is 30 minutes, 5 days a week. And we want that to be a mix of cardio and resistance training. So cardio is typically going to be things like walking or jogging, maybe riding an exercise bike. And then your resistance is going to be something that puts some pressure on your muscles. So that could be weightlifting, but it could also be resistance bands. It could be body weight exercises like push-ups or pull-ups. It could be water exercise, or ultimately a slew of other things. So just keep in mind, we don't want you to focus only on one or the other. We want to incorporate both. Habit number 8 is taking vitamins. So vitamins are required for all of our surgeries lifelong. So if you're a pretty bad pill taker, go ahead and get in the habit of taking a vitamin every single day at a certain time. That way you're in that habit after surgery and you don't have to worry, ooh, I missed my vitamins today, or I missed them for an entire week. If you have any vitamins just laying around your house, those are probably just fine for you to start taking. If not, just a general over-the-counter multivitamin, but do not go buy the huge big bottle because more than likely you'll have surgery fairly soon, and those vitamins are going to be different than your over-the-counter vitamins. So buy a smaller bottle is my tip for you. Okay, and last note here for our habits and things that we want to work on before surgery is just creating a circle of support. So this journey is definitely more of an emotional journey than it is a physical. So things with weight and weight loss in general kind of put a toll on you mentally, and it's very difficult if you're like the only person in your life that's working on making these lifestyle changes and it seems like everybody else is kind of going against you or there's all these temptations out there. So I think it's very important to have that support set up before you actually have surgery. So support looks different for everybody. It could be friends, family members, co-workers, or it could be some form of an online support group. And so with that, I just kind of want to plug our online support group. It's on Facebook, and the name of it is Panhandle Weight Loss Center Support Group. So if you're interested in joining that, it's a private group of patients who've had surgery with us. And then there's also other availabilities for support groups around town, either on Zoom or in person. And so find something that works for you. Everybody is a little bit different in what they require with support. And so find a group that works for you, find one that's uplifting, join it and get involved. Okay, that wraps up our lifestyle and habit changes that we want you to work on before surgery. So like I said, pick 1 or 2 to start working on and go ahead and get going.